I want to tell you something that nobody in the financial industry will ever say out loud. Something that the banks do not want you to understand. Something that your university professors, your financial advisors, and your well-meaning parents were never taught themselves. The middle class is not a stepping stone. It is a trap. A beautifully decorated, deeply comfortable, almost invisible trap. And the most dangerous thing about this trap, the single feature that makes it so devastatingly effective, is that the people inside it are not suffering. They are not starving. They are not in pain. They are comfortable. They have a salary that arrives every 2 weeks with the reliability of a sunrise. They have a car in the driveway, a subscription to a streaming service, and a vacation they take every 18 months to somewhere warm. And because they are comfortable, they never feel a desperate, burning urgency to escape. I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska. My father was a stockbroker. I watched people my entire childhood, intelligent, hard-working, disciplined people, spend 40 years of their lives faithful executing the plan they had been given. Study hard, get a good job, buy a house, save a little, retire at 65. And I noticed something that disturbed me deeply from a very early age. The plan worked, but only for the person who sold it to them. Today, I'm going to show you exactly why that plan was never designed to make you wealthy. I'm going to show you the precise psychological and financial mechanisms that keep 99% of people exactly where they are. And then I am going to show you the door I walked through, and how you can walk through it too. Listen to me, my friend. From the moment you are old enough to sit in a classroom, society begins handing you a script. Nobody calls it a script, of course. They call it education. They call it preparation for life. But make no mistake, it is a script. And it is written very carefully to produce one specific outcome: a reliable, productive, grateful employee. The script goes like this. You study for 12 to 16 years. You accumulate credentials. You apply for a position at an organization that someone else built, using capital that someone else allocated to pursue a vision that someone else had. You trade the most irreplaceable asset you possess, your time, for a fixed, predictable number that appears in your bank account every other Friday. And you do this for 40 years. Now, I want to be very clear. I'm not telling you that work is beneath you. I'm not telling you that ambition or diligence is a character flaw. What I am telling you is this. There is a catastrophic, fundamental difference between working hard and building wealth. And the script you were handed confuses these two things so completely, so deliberately, that most people never realize they are not the same thing at all. Working hard makes you valuable to someone else's empire. Building wealth means constructing your own. The middle-class worker is not poor. That is the insidious genius of the trap. He earns too much to feel desperate and too little to ever achieve escape velocity. He earns $70,000 a year, and he believes he is doing well, and in many ways, compared to genuine poverty, he is. But here is the mathematical reality of a situation that nobody will draw on a whiteboard for him. His income is linear. He sells 1 unit of time, and he receives 1 unit of money. If he works harder, he receives slightly more money. If he stops working entirely, he receives nothing. His wealth is entirely dependent on his continued physical participation. He is not an investor. He is a human machine, biological, fragile, and temporary. And the moment I understood this distinction as a young man, truly understood it in my bones, everything changed. Over the course of my life, I have studied the middle class with the same obsessive analytical intensity that I apply to a company's balance sheet. And I have identified 3 specific chains that keep otherwise intelligent, capable people locked in financial stagnation for the entirety of their working lives. The first chain is what I call the lifestyle inflation trap. It operates with the elegant cruelty of a ratchet mechanism. Every time the middle-class worker receives a raise, his standard of living expands to consume it. He earns $50,000. He drives a used car and lives in a modest apartment. He earns $80,000. He leases a newer car and moves into a larger home. He earns $120,000. He now has a mortgage that requires $120,000 to sustain. His expenses do not merely grow alongside his income. They grow slightly ahead of it, like a shadow that is always just a half a step in front of the man who casts it. The result is that the high-earning middle manager who makes $150,000 a year often has less genuine financial freedom than a disciplined 25-year-old who earns $40,000 and invests $10,000 of it every single year. Because freedom is not a function of income. Freedom is the distance between your income and your expenses, multiplied by time. The second chain is the credential illusion. The middle class has been sold the belief that credentials equal leverage, that an MBA, a CFA, a professional certification, these things are the path to wealth. And so the ambitious middle-class worker spends his most valuable years, and often a significant amount of borrowed money, accumulating letters after his name. He believes these letters are assets. But I want you to think about this very carefully. A credential is a permission slip. It gives you permission to compete for a position inside someone else's organization. It does not give you ownership. It does not give you equity. It does not give you a share of the compounding returns generated by the enterprise. It gives you access to a salary. And a salary, no matter how impressive it looks on paper, is still a linear trade of time for money. I have a great deal of respect for education. I have read more books than most people could in 3 lifetimes. But I want to be precise. I was not reading to collect credentials. I was reading to build mental models. I was reading to understand businesses, human psychology, and the mathematics of compounding. I was reading to become a better capital allocator, not a more attractive employee. The third chain, and this is the one that I believe is the most powerful and the most painful, is what I call the deferred life syndrome. The middle class has been taught to live in 2 phases. There is the sacrifice phase, the 40 years of working, saving, deferring, waiting, and then there is the reward phase, which begins at 65 and lasts for whatever years remain. The brilliant, crushing trap embedded in this design is that it requires you to spend the peak decades of your physical health, your mental energy, your creativity, and your capacity for adventure in exchange for a retirement that begins when your body is already old. You are asked to trade the best years of your life for the permission to finally leave during the worst ones, and most people accept this trade without ever once stopping to question whether it is the only option available. Listen to me, my friend. I want to tell you about the exact moment my understanding of money permanently shifted. I was 11 years old. I had just purchased 3 shares of Citi Service Preferred stock at $38 per share, using money I had earned delivering newspapers and selling chewing gum door to door. I watched that stock fall to $27, and I felt the cold, nauseating grip of financial fear for the first time in my life. I almost sold. Every instinct I had been given by the adults around me screamed at me to sell, to stop the pain, to cut my losses and move on. But I sat with the discomfort. I did not sell. The stock recovered and climbed to $40 per share. I sold it, and I made a small profit. I remember feeling pleased with myself for exactly 1 week, until I watched that same stock climb to $202 per share. And in that single devastating moment of clarity, I understood something that altered the entire trajectory of my life. The middle-class mindset sells at $40 because it cannot tolerate uncertainty. It banks the small profit. It takes the relief. It trades the long-term fortune for the short-term comfort. And it does this not out of stupidity, but out of deeply programmed psychological fear. The wealthy mindset understands that discomfort is not a warning signal. It is a toll. It is the price of admission to the compounding machine. Every moment of uncertainty you endure, every dip you hold through, every year you resist the desperate urge to liquidate your position and spend the money on something immediately gratifying. That is the work. That is the actual labor of wealth building, and it requires nothing but patience and psychological discipline. From that day forward, I stopped asking the question that every middle-class person asks, how do I earn more money? I started asking the question that changes everything. How do I make my money work harder than I do? An employee trades time for money. An investor deploys money to earn more money. The first model has a ceiling. There are only 24 hours in a day. The second model has no ceiling whatsoever. I want to show you the precise mathematics of how the escape actually works. Because it is not magic, it is not luck. It is not the product of genius or insider information or inherited advantage. It is arithmetic, cold, patient, ruthless arithmetic. When I was 26 years old, I had saved $174,000. Today, that number may sound either large or small, depending on your circumstances, but here's what I did not do with that money. I did not buy a larger house than I needed. I did not purchase a car that announced my ambitions to the neighborhood. I did not upgrade my lifestyle in any of the dozens of ways that the culture around me enthusiastically encouraged. I deployed it as capital, quietly, patiently, and with total conviction. Here is the thing that the middle class fundamentally misunderstands about compounding. They understand it mathematically. They have seen the charts. They know that money invested early grows exponentially over time, but they do not feel it. And because they do not feel it in their bones, they consistently choose the immediate, tangible reward over the invisible, deferred, exponential one. Let me make it feel real. Imagine two people. The first person, from age 22 to age 32, invests $500 a month into a diversified index fund and then stops completely, not a single additional dollar. The second person spends his 20s enjoying his income and begins investing $500 a month at age 32 and continues faithfully until age 65. Who has more money at retirement? The first person, by a significant margin. Despite investing for only 10 years compared to 33 years, despite contributing a fraction of the total dollars, the only thing the first person had that the second person did not was time. And he used it. This is the escape door. It does not require a high income. It does not require a prestigious education. It does not require connections or luck or a particular zip code. It requires one thing and one thing only, the willingness to delay consumption long enough for compounding to begin working on your behalf. But I will tell you the real reason most people never walk through this door, and it is not laziness, it is not ignorance. Most people have heard of compounding. Most people understand it abstractly. The real reason is identity. The middle class has been given a specific identity, a consumer identity. And every system around them, every advertisement, every social norm, every measure of status is designed to reinforce that identity and punish the deviation from it. When your colleague buys a new car and you choose not to, you feel the social friction immediately. When your neighbors renovate their kitchen and you continue living contentedly in your modest home, there's an invisible pressure, a whisper from the culture that says you are falling behind, that you are not succeeding, that you should want more, spend more, display more. I lived in the same house in Omaha for decades. I still do. Not because I could not afford something grander, because I understood from a very early age that every dollar I spent on displaying wealth was a dollar I could no longer deploy to build it. So let me give you the actual framework, not the vague inspiration, the concrete, actionable architecture of the escape. The first move is the identity shift. Before you change a single financial behavior, you must change how you see yourself. You are not a consumer who occasionally invests. You are an investor who occasionally consumes. This is not a semantic difference. It is a complete psychological reorganization of your priorities. The consumer asks, what can I afford to buy this month? The investor asks, what can I afford to deploy this month? Run those two questions simultaneously for 40 years and see where each one takes you. The second move is what I think of as building your ownership mentality. The middle class rents their financial future to their employer, trusting that a salary and a pension will be enough. The wealthy class owns. They own businesses. They own real estate. They own equity. They own assets that produce cash flow independent of their daily participation. You do not need to start by owning a business. You can begin owning fractions of the greatest businesses in the world for the cost of a dinner out. When you buy a share of a great company, a company with durable competitive advantages, honest management, and decades of consistent profitability, you become a partial owner of something real, something that works while you sleep, something that compounds silently in the background of your life, year after year, building a fortune that you never have to clock in to maintain. The third move is the one that will feel the most counterintuitive, and it is arguably the most important. You must learn to be comfortable doing nothing. The market will test you. It will fall 40%, and the entire financial media apparatus will scream that the world is ending. Your friends will sell. Your colleagues will sell. Your own nervous system will produce overwhelming chemical signals urging you to sell, and you must sit in your quiet room and do absolutely nothing. Because here is the truth that every market panic reveals. The middle class does not lose money because markets go down. The middle class loses money because they sell when markets go down and buy when markets go up. They consistently buy high and sell low because they are making financial decisions with their amygdala instead of their frontal cortex. They're responding to fear instead of mathematics. The wealthy do not have better information. They have better psychology. They have trained themselves through reading, through reflection, through the deliberate construction of a long-term perspective to remain calm in the exact moments when everyone else is losing their mind. The middle class is not a failure. The people inside it are not lazy or foolish or undeserving. They are executing a script that was written for them by a system that benefits from their compliance. They are working hard, they are playing by the rules, and they are being rewarded with exactly what the rules were designed to give them: enough comfort to stop questioning and not quite enough freedom to stop working. Escaping it does not require exceptional intelligence. It does not require a windfall or a lucky break or a connection you do not have. It requires a decision. A single, quiet, deeply personal decision to stop performing your net worth and start building it. To stop consuming in ways that signal success and start investing in ways that create it. To stop renting your future to someone else and start owning the smallest possible piece of it for yourself. That decision does not need to be dramatic. It does not need to be announced. It just needs to be made, and then it needs to be honored. Every single month. For a very long time. If this shifted something in how you think about money, I want you to hit that like button right now. Not for the algorithm, but as a commitment to yourself, that you heard this and you are choosing to think differently. Subscribe if you want to go deeper. We are just getting started. The door is open. The only question is whether you are going to walk through it.